I and thousands like me have forsaken everything for what we believe. We are at war and I'm a soldier. Now you too will taste the reality of this situation.
We are living with them. They are here. They're not outside our borders, they are here.
So when you ask, is radical Islam a threat to Europe? Of course it is, because you find this large and growing minority population that is growing more and more radical and rejects more and more blatantly, overtly, and stridently the societies in which they operate.
They are using our laws against us. They are using our democracy against us. And they know it. They know exactly what they're doing.
When you think just from a military perspective, forgetting everything else, the September 11th hijackers trained for their mission to attack the United States inside the United States of America. That is something unbelievable. Here these 19 Arab Islamic fundamentalists come to the United States, dress like Americans, get American driver's license, register in American flight schools, and in American flight schools, they learn how to destroy the World Trade Center with American jetliners. That is an unbelievable thing. That means that you don't need necessarily to have geographical territory at your disposal, because you can use the geography, use the territory of your enemies in order to destroy your enemies. That is the most postmodern type of warfare we've ever seen.
It is the first war where no state is in war. It is a transnational war with transnational actors that is spread across beyond state and cannot be controlled by state. In fact, they can themselves infiltrate states, influence states, but they are not state actors. That is what makes this war far more difficult to execute.
I think the world, despite the number of attacks on various countries, is still in denial. They don't want to believe that someone has declared war on them.
In the 1930s, the danger of Nazism was there. It was in everything Hitler wrote and said, in everything the Nazi authorities did.
Dann wird das Ergebnis nicht die Bolschewisierung der Erde und damit der Sieg des Judentums sein, sondern die Vernichtung der jüdischen Rasse in Europa.
In the corruption of a whole generation of German youth through the propaganda of Nazism in schools. But people thought, well, this is a German problem, it's a limited problem. We have our own problems, we have our unemployment. And I think the same is true today. They don't connect the dots. They don't connect the acts together. They don't see that Islamic fundamentalism is a global network and a global problem.
There is no terrorist threat. There is no terrorist threat. Yes, there have been horrific acts of terrorism, and yes, there will be acts of terrorism again. But that does not mean that there's some massive terrorist threat.
We have to worry about terrorism. If terrorism had struck on the West Coast rather than the East Coast, some of the folks in Hollywood might have a somewhat different view.
People don't want to feel that this is part of a single threat, because if you come to that conclusion, and I'm sure it's the true conclusion, then you have to do something about it.
If you ignore a real threat, like has happened in the past before World War II, then the world will pay with many, many millions of dead.
In Second World War, the West was sleeping. The Munich Accords came regarding what should we do about this Adolf Hitler who wants to take over Czechoslovakia. So what did the parliament do in Great Britain? They got together and they said, well, we need to give Hitler land for peace.
In return for Hitler's guarantee of world peace, Chamberlain and Daladier prevailed upon Czechoslovakia to give up the Sudetenland without a fight. In Britain, a happy Chamberlain came back declaring he had achieved peace in our time. One of the most tragic and ironic scenes in all history.
This morning, I had
another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine.
Chamberlain believed that they could do a deal with Hitler, that Britain and Germany had a special affinity.
We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
Winston Churchill had warned his country and his government that they were pursuing a disastrous course with regard to appeasing Germany.
These gangs of bandits have sought to darken the light of the world, have sought to stand between the common people of all the lands and their march forward into their inheritance.
Peace, it wasn't peace. By taking the Sudetenland, they had made Czechoslovakia defenseless, a ripe plum ready to fall into Hitler's lap. Within 6 months of declaring that he wanted no more territory anywhere, he violated the Munich Agreement. Austria and Czechoslovakia were gone without a fight, and Hitler was getting his control of Eastern Europe. Poland was next on the map.
Churchill never considered himself a great leader. He always considered that he had failed, because from 1933 to 1939, he had warned his country and his government. So when war came, and when in May 1940 he was asked to be Prime Minister, he felt he was only there because he had failed. That if he had been listened to, if the country had understood the German danger, if the country had allied with other states threatened by Germany, then this situation would never have come to pass. That Hitler could have been deterred. Perhaps it could have been stopped. Perhaps millions of lives could have been saved.
Today, the press, by minimizing the potential threats, by ignoring the potential threats, are doing a tremendous disservice to the West by not alarming the people to what they should be alarmed about.
When you ignore what people are saying, when they're actively on a daily basis, calling for your own annihilation, calling for the annihilation of your country, you're ignoring them at your own risk.
The same thing is happening now again. History is repeating itself.
I was a very intense believer in the Nazi ideology, and I know what a supreme dedication to an ideology can do.
From an early age, Alphonse Heck was influenced by the Nazi worldview. He joined the Hitler Youth at the age of 10, and by the end of World War II, he was a high-ranking officer of the Hitler Youth.
It is absolutely correct to say, if you can't learn from the events of Nazi Germany, you will not be able to grasp the true intent of the danger of the radical Muslim world today. You're simply hiding.
History has an unfortunate habit of always repeating itself.
The idea that the radical Muslims have and that Nazis had is they demonize the Jews. You know, they just turn them into demons. And I mean, this is exactly what happened in Germany. Now, can you imagine? We were enlightened people and we fell for this. Why wouldn't Muslims fall for this?
فاليهود هم اليهود، هؤلاء هم الذين يجب أن يذبحوا
ويجب أن يقتلوا. لمن وضع حزاما ناسفا على نفسه أو على أبنائه ودخل في أعماق اليهود وقال الله أكبر ولله الحمد لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
They are killing the infidels just like the preacher in the mosque told them to do. It's their duty to kill them.